Welcome back to the Festival of Creative Operations 2022. Over to you, Scott.
Hello. Thanks, everybody, for joining my session today. And a big thanks to Henry Stewart. Really loving the theme of evolution of your team and the sessions that I participated or followed today. I'm going to talk about sort of the bear in the room, which is managing risk and creative resourcing in a climate of uncertainty. And I am sure we're all feeling it. You know, this gray beard is real. And so I've been through enough marketing recessions to sort of know that uncertainty is really hard to manage through. And today I'm going to talk about 3 ways to tackle it. First is taking a look at flexible resourcing. The second is leaning in your data to make your case about budgeting, resource planning. And then thirdly is building deeper partnerships as you go forward. We're not alone, right? All of us in this call are sort of thinking through and focusing on how do we manage through uncertainty. Creative operations is hard enough when we're growing, but with uncertainty, it really comes back to sort of flowing with the change, right? This is really about scaling up and down by building flexibility into your process, leaning into your agency partners, and Stephanie was talking a little bit about that, so that you have smoother team transitions. And I think most importantly, keeping your best people doing your most strategic work. In an earlier session, Jeremy talked about the challenges of recruiting and retaining and measuring engagement from your team, and the work that they're doing through uncertainty will make a really big difference. Over the last 6 months, we've had several clients who have scaled down. That happens as well as scaling up, particularly with uncertainty. But what's really interesting when you scale down is often priorities change, and then the requirements for creative operations or creative execution are still there. You might lose the head count, but the work really never stops. That's a big effect on your priorities, your spending, and on your internal culture, right? So you got to keep your eye on the long-term prize of continuing to execute, but figuring out how to do it as things are changing. And really the core of that is about quickly adjusting. And that takes flexibility, but it also takes strategy, the data to get there, collaboration, flexibility, and focus. And so when spending priorities change, the work is still there. You need to be able to reprioritize. And that means examining your internal capabilities, matching those to where the work is going, and then filling in the gaps, working through partners as opposed to with head count. Right? That's really the key in flexible resourcing, is to take a look at your data and understand, are you on the right track, and how can the data support that from a strategic perspective? You want to be able to translate your deliverables into resourcing strategy. Projects for sure are a key metric for all of us, right? What projects are getting done, what projects are coming. But ultimately, utilization, resource forecasting, capability mapping, taking a look at your future needs this month, next quarter, through the rest of the year. Now, all of you have more data than you think, but you need to gather that data, you need to analyze that data, and most importantly, there's 4 key questions you need to ask to support your resourcing strategy and ultimately budgeting and resource requirements. And so Ideal Strategy looks at 4 questions from a creative operations perspective. What's the nature of the work? How much work is there? How much is coming? Is it one time or ongoing? And then what are the skills required to do that work? The level of expertise, can you scale that up or down? What actual capabilities do you need? And then the 4th one that I really want you to look at is, what's the level of collaboration with internal teams? How much direct interaction is required in order to understand and complete the work? Because that's where the scale question comes from, right? If you understand the level of engagement, you'll understand the resourcing model that you'll need. When, to answer the question that was asked during Stephanie's session, right? What work do I send to partner agencies? Really depends on the level of integration you have with that partner agency and the level of collaboration needed to execute that work. And during a period of economic uncertainty, when you're trying to get the most important work to your most important team members, understanding the work that you can pass off to a partner without adding headcount, really makes a big difference. So those are the 4 questions we really focus on. And then you translate projects into resourcing recommendations. So you're actually scoping monthly, quarterly objectives and campaigns, and you're evaluating your resources based on the business goals that are being presented to you. That'll allow you to support your head count when people are cutting budgets, or gain budget or focus when you need to expand. And it'll allow you to see those areas where you can use more flexible staffing models to meet your unique needs, right? So you may not need a full-time motion graphics professional on your team, but if you can add the capability of motion graphics to what you're executing as a partial, then that sort of makes an agency addition to what's going on. And really, that's the trick to what do I keep in-house with my most important people? What do I outsource? And then the question is, how do I outsource it to get it done with the least amount of pain and the most amount of flexibility? And tapping into flexibility really means finding a partner who can collaborate with you so deeply that they can flex up and down as the economic conditions change or as your budget change. The number one thing that I just get into conversations with clients about is, when do I need it to be an internal headcount? What projects and when should I go to an external headcount? And if budgets are changing or budgets are shrinking, then it's really, what resources do I want to hold on strategically internally? What resources can I trim? And then support any work that comes in through partnership. Not every project requires headcount. Not every goal requires headcount. And your CFO, your CEO are going to be looking for those answers over the next 6 to 12 months as they're trying to manage their budget in a more flexible way. And it doesn't necessarily directly correlate to capability. In fact, sometimes the more specialized capability works better when it's coming from an external source. It's really the level of collaboration and integration with your teams, the brand knowledge that's necessary, and then the accountability and depth of relationship that you can get with your partner. Okay, let's talk about a case study. Hopefully this is making sense, and please, in the comments, sort of elaborate on that. We've got lots of case studies. I'm not presenting with a client right now, so I'm just going to talk about their case study a little bit more generically, right? This is a client that competes really competes with Uber in the new economy, the digital economy. And so they've been a rapidly growing client over the past 3 years of working with them. They had more creative work to tackle than they had people to tackle it. And they were facing internal bottlenecks that were just preventing them from getting everything done with the speed and quality that they needed. But most importantly, as their internal priorities pivoted, they were getting lots of burnout from reprioritization. Right? Your team, from an engagement perspective, want to be working on important work, but they also want to have sort of a consistent flow of that work coming in. Agencies actually can fill in some of those gaps so that your internal people stay focused. And there's a bunch of different models that can work that way. Typical agency, pay-as-you-go project work, or even freelancer pool is where we all started. But though that model's evolved to reserve capacity, where you can take specialized capabilities or agency team members who really understand your brand and priorities and reserve that capability so that it's available to help you. That should give you more efficiency as you execute internally, but also more flexibility. And it produced, at least for this client, higher quality work with more output. And really, the agency partnership, we look at resourcing with this client on a quarterly basis. So every quarter, it's do we think that the work stream, the answer to those 4 strategic questions, are they changing for this quarter? And if they're changing, how? Is the nature of the work changing? Is the skill level changing? Is the volume changing? Or is the level of integration or collaboration changing? And that allows us to flex the staffing recommendation before we even get into specific agency scopes of work or understanding internal headcount for them. It's really boils that recommendation back into What are the strategic recommendations that we need to make around resourcing? And then how are we flexibly going to deliver against those? Let me slow down a little bit, make sure that that makes sense. In order to get there, what you really need is to lean into your partners. Right? Keith mentioned that in earlier sessions. Stephanie mentioned that in earlier sessions. Freelance resources can definitely fill short-term gaps, but they're constantly changing. And the more that you scale, the harder it is to manage a growing pool of freelance resources. Traditional agency relationships don't always flex the way that you need to. Often they are looking at a 12-month-long scope or retainer, and it doesn't really fit the flexibility that you need. When you hire people, one of the earlier presentations really talked about the challenge of hiring, the challenge of onboarding, the challenge of selection of team, but also integrating them into your processes. Hiring is sort of a 12, 18, 24-month process to get capability and capacity in place. What you need to be able to supplement that hiring with is resourcing that can change on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis, so more frequently than every year. That actually, even though the cost per hour is sometimes more expensive than doing it in-house, that flexibility over a 12-month period actually does a more efficient and cost-effective job of using your budget. And you can reprioritize those resources more quickly across multiple lines of business. So if during budget cuts, if your company is pivoting a little bit in response to economic conditions, or if there's uncertainty about what budgets will be in place next quarter, next year, shifting resources between lines of business can allow you to keep people who really understand your brand and your processes and workflow deeply. But agency partners and the accountability and focus that they bring can make that shift into new areas easier. But it has to be a deep relationship, and it has to be a flexible relationship in order to deliver those capabilities. And that's kind of what we do. This isn't a sales pitch. What Brainrider does, we do flexible resourcing models. We've got full service agency capabilities built to help creative operations deliver that sort of quality, budget, and speed pyramid that needs done with fun, creative talent that cares about your business. But more importantly, I'm actually happy to chat with anyone as you're thinking through your own model, figuring out your own data, how to answer those 4 strategic questions, and then put resourcing requirements together that make sense, not just to your teams internally, but make sense as you do budgeting for next quarter or you do budgeting for next year. And the answer isn't always headcount. It isn't always freelance. It isn't always agency. It's usually the right flexible combination of all 3 of those. That's what I've got for you today. Really happy, this is I miss the in-person element of sessions where we're all together live. Happy to join you in the chat or after the session to sort of hear about your individual experiences as you're reacting to economic news, as you're reacting to putting budgets together for 2023. We can provide lots of case studies and examples of clients who've managed through that by really putting together flexible resourcing options. We'd love to ride with you as clients, but really our goal is to help the creative operations world evolve from a process and resourcing model so that the answers are actually more nuanced and more flexible and can allow you to do what you need to do. That's what I've got today. Reach out if you've got any questions, and thanks for joining us.